Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Today's show is brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee, and a terrific service department that backs it all up every step of the way at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, online, sunburymotors.com. Play-by-play call of the day, the Little League World Series gets rolling with a no-hitter from Japan.
Akito Masuda's ready with an 0-2. Ball away at 71. Runner goes. The throw. Got him! And it's a no-hitter for Japan.
And this game, Cuba trying to be aggressive on the bases. Doing a little delayed steal and a perfect pitch. And a perfect throw to second. Delivers it, and he is out. Beautiful tag at second base by Masuda. Game over.
I can't recall a no-hitter ending on a guy being thrown out at second base trying to steal. Interesting. All right. Gerry Dulac now joins us. Steelers Network and Post-Gazette. Gerry, welcome. How are you?
Well, Steve, I am fine. And of all the interview requests I get during the season and out of season, there's none I enjoy doing more than chatting with you, my friend.
Same here, my friend. I appreciate that. Very kind of you to say and think that. Let's get to the Steelers. While a lot of people will bubble wrap their personnel during the course of preseason games, Mike doesn't. So what's the approach this week for week 2 as to who he wants to play and who he wants to keep back?
Well, I think, Mike Tomlin said this morning, Steve, that he intends to play all of his veteran players who did not play in Tampa, and that includes their Pro Bowl players, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, T.J. Watt, Patrick Peterson's going to play, not play in Tampa, Joey Porter Jr., who was held out of last week's game with a few leg issues, he's going to play. So they're going to use all their healthy guys. Now, how much remains to be seen. I'm curious to see how they treat Game 3 because, there's 2.5 weeks between games after that preseason finale and the season opener. It's a little different than past years, but I actually think these guys might, if they play in the third preseason game, it might be sparingly in Kenny Picket in the offense. Obviously, they're going to play more than one series, but everybody who's healthy will play, unlike the Tampa game, the first game in Tampa, where a lot of those guys were held out, the veteran guys, which is what I expected.
And there have been a lot of, obviously they have these scrimmages that they take place with other teams. So give me the value in your mind of the scrimmage part and the value of the preseason part, because each one does have value. So how do you assess the value of each?
Well, I'm a big game guy, Steve. I don't put a lot of stock in practice. And by that, I mean, look, I know it's necessary. You hear every player talk about the need for it, but you hear every coach talk about the necessity for it. But, I was reading something today from T.J. Watt, and he was talking about how veterans use preseason practice to work on their craft, not necessarily play, how they would in a game. And what that points up is all these people who put a lot of stock on what's happening in practice, what's happening in 7-on-7, what's happening in what the Steelers like to call their 7-shots drill. I don't, because it doesn't count. And when you're a veteran player, you're just not going to play with the same intensity in practice as you are during a regular season game. And then, of course, it gets amplified even more, as you know, once you get to the postseason. So what I see in practice, I don't, now younger guys, I'll look at, you look at their skill set. But with a lot of the other guys, we don't know what they're working on. We don't know what they're trying to accomplish, even with the plays that are being called. Coaches are doing things to see what things might work as opposed to what they might typically call or want to use in those game situations. So, I'm not a guy who puts, I got a little bit of that Allen Iverson in me. I don't put a lot of stock in practice, even though I know it's a necessary evil. I evaluate guys on what I see in games, and I start, you get a feel for what the coaches think, even more so when you see the guys playing in games. What they think of these guys, who they depend on, and also maybe just what they want to see from some of their younger guys.
And not only that, though, here's another element to it. Yes, practice is important because you need to refine what you're doing. If somebody's running it out, that should be cut at 9 and they're cutting it at 11. That's where practice comes in.
Right.
But to me, these scrimmages, it's not talked about enough. These are controlled scrimmages. Games aren't controlled.
Stephen, to that point, look, they get the crowds out here. They had 21,000 people here last Sunday. My goodness gracious. After a preseason game, which was surprising to me. Usually the crowds, they diminish a little after they've played a game. But there's a lot of excitement about this team. But to your point, plays are being made down the field or completions, and the crowd goes crazy. And the reality is they don't touch the quarterbacks. And so in a game situation, those quarterbacks might have been sacked,
right.
or whatnot, or hit. And here they're just running out of the pocket. Nobody touches them. And so they have plenty of time to throw the ball down the field. And that's what's controlled. The control is they don't hit the quarterbacks, and that's just not a game situation, And so that's why, again, you have to couch everything you see in practice here at training camp because it's just not the same. It's just not the same.
Right, and here's the other element too: the NFL, in the collective bargaining agreement, has put more restrictions on hitting in practices. And that's why I feel, and you tell me if I'm wrong about this, Gerry, I feel like now a good part of September, I feel like I'm watching a step above preseason games because these guys have to get you. That's where the hitting's happening.
Oh, well, there's no question about it, and you see that especially with the veteran players, and that's what I was talking about earlier with guys going, the veteran players, if they're lucky, going 75% because they know they have to save themselves. And even though the league has limited the amount of days you can spend in pads, especially during the season, they're doing that to protect these guys, and the players realize they have to protect themselves. Teams protect them because of their big contracts. So the Steelers aren't going to go heavy with T.J. Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward, and they're going to let the younger guys battle it out because, hey, Steve, they come to training camp and they pretty much know 50 to 51 players out of the 53 they're going to keep. I could pretty much tell you 50 or 51 of the 53 players they're going to keep. But they want to develop some players for the practice squad. There's always those one or two guys that they go, hey, this guy might turn into something. You're always going to get some of that. But they know what a lot of these guys can do, and the veteran players are just trying to get their bodies ready for the regular season. And they have to pace themselves because it is a long year. And, it's only August, and they're going to be going into January. And, for some teams, hopefully February. So, yeah, they know how to pace themselves. And to get excited about anything in August, to me, is extremely premature.
What's been the feeling in the camp of where Kenny Picket is right now?
A lot of excitement. Of course, if you talk to the fans, they have him in the Hall of Fame already, and that's what has to be tempered just a little. The guy's entering his second year, and what you notice about him is there's no quarterback competition this year. It's his team, and he's the type of guy that he's very comfortable being the leader of the team. You saw that last year as a rookie. He has that quality about him. He has that. That leadership intangible, if you will. His arm looks stronger. But Steve, let me see year 2. Do I think he could be a very good quarterback in the NFL? Yes. Do I think he could be a great quarterback? No. He's also following a Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger. But let's see year 2. And while this is his second go-round, this is also the second go-round for the defensive coordinators who now get a longer look at him to study and prepare for his tendencies. And, you can use the example of a Mac Jones who flourished as a rookie and looked really good and then really struggled in year 2 with the Patriots. Or you can look at Justin Herbert, who had a good rookie year and added to it in year 2. That's what we're going to find out with Kenny Pickett. But he has the mobility. He throws well on the run. He throws well across his body. Like most young quarterbacks, his completion percentage wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. I think it was 63%. And I thought the biggest thing he did last year was after throwing 7 picks in his first 5 games, he threw only 1 in the final 8 or in the final 9. And for a rookie quarterback to have the intelligence and wherewithal and kind of the moxie to know not to turn the ball over and still be productive, mostly productive, not terribly because they just didn't score a lot of points and they don't have a lot of big plays. Right. But to be able to cut down on the interceptions like that, to me, shows a lot about his football IQ.
And by the way, that Hall of Fame quarterback, future Hall of Fame quarterback, was here in State College Friday.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was at the U.S. Kids event, so he's here with his son.
Oh, yeah, his son's a very good player.
Yeah. No, he was. So they played over at the Blue Course on Friday as part of the U.S. Kids event.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to text him and ask him about it.
Yeah. Patrick Peterson sounds like he's going to go this time through as one of those veterans. What's been your impression of him so far? I mean, he's 33 now.
Steve, there's another guy, too, that you can relate to in Allen Robinson, who's going to bring that same type of veteran leadership and hopefully production to the receiving room. But Patrick Peterson is a pro's pro. I mean, he's an 8-time Pro Bowler. He's 3-time All-Pro. And he's just a tremendous teammate, a tremendous person. And we'll see what he has left. 33 years old. But last year, statistically, was the second best of his career. 5 picks, 13 passes defense. But, he was telling me this a couple weeks ago in between us talking about golf because he's a golf fanatic. But, he understood that teams started throwing a little bit more his way, wanting to test him. Unlike those years when he was considered a top 3 or top 5 cornerback. Teams didn't test him. But last year, they threw more in his direction, and he responded with some good numbers. But I think the key is going to be, he knows this, and, of course, Mike Tomlin knows this. They don't want him, for the most part, playing with his back to the quarterback. They don't want him in press coverage running on the outside with a receiver one-on-one for the most part. They would prefer him playing nickel. They would prefer him playing dime. They would prefer him playing a little safety, maybe in some of their sub packages, where he has his eyes in the backfield. They understand he's 33, and he's not the elite player that he once was, and he was an elite player, and he knows that. So it's finding out where and how he fits into that defense. But I don't think there's any question he's going to be a nice addition. Is he going to make a difference in that defense, maybe like Minkah Fitzpatrick does in the back end? No. But I think with everything that he can bring, both from a leadership standpoint and his, you talk about football IQ, that guy has it. I think it was a nice addition for them to bring in Patrick Peterson.
And how much can a Joey Porter Jr. benefit from tapping into that football IQ that Peterson has?
Yeah, and there's no question. And Patrick Peterson talks to him a lot. They don't have a player, and they haven't had a player like Joey Porter Jr. in a long time. They had some nice cornerbacks. Joe Hayden was obviously very good, but Joe Hayden was 5'10", 5'11". I don't have to tell you about Joey Porter. 6'2.5", and Steve, he looks bigger than even the 193, and he has those long arms. He is a big corner who can run, and I think, to me, obviously, I don't care what they have or who they have, he is their best option on the outside right now. Yeah, might they live with some of his mistakes? Of course, he's a rookie. But they really like him, and he is going to play a lot. And there's no question Patrick Peterson can help him a great deal. But he looks really, really good. They like what they see. And, they're going to get a little better look in some game action, against Josh Allen and the Bills on Saturday.
Finally, is there, you talked about essentially going into camp, and you had a pretty good feel about who the top 50 or 51 would be. Is there any competition anywhere you're seeing that gives you any intrigue?
I think that the thing that is most curious to me is what do they do with Broderick Jones, their number one pick. They move up 2 spots in the draft to get him at 15. Despite that offensive line being the most improved unit on the team last year, I mean, it's remarkable where they were in the preseason. They remade a lot of it prior to 2020 and 22. And then they go out in the offseason, they sign two more guards, Isaac Seumalo from the Eagles, give him a big deal, and then they draft Broderick Jones. They wanted to beef up that offensive line some more. And so, Dan Moore is at 2 years as a starter. He's never missed a game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's Anthony Munoz, but, he's not a swinging gate at left tackle either.
No.
He is a big-bodied guy who is athletic, and you could tell he's kind of reshaped his body coming into camp. And so, it's not like they're just going to thrust Broderick Jones in there, but Dan Moore is a more than capable left tackle when you consider they threw him in there as a rookie, and he's done a pretty good job. In year 2 was the same. A couple holding penalties, but again, he's just a year 2 left tackle, and now he's in his 3rd year. And, I always tell everybody, Steve, I said, they didn't bring Broderick Jones in to lead the band at halftime. That's for sure. But where that's my old friend Tom Donahoe's line. Where and when that occurs, I don't know. But it's not like they're going to move somebody to right tackle because they like their right tackle, Chuks Okorafor. So I'm curious to see. It's not a battle. Dan Moore has taken pretty much every snap with the first team offense and will continue to do so. But at some point in time, they're going to want to work Broderick Jones in there because he is a big man who can move. And when he gets his hands on you, forget it. But that, to me, I would say is the most curious battle. Other than that, I don't think there's a battle for a starting position at all on this football team. But that's going to be a curious move to see how that plays itself out.
Can't thank you enough because you always, I'm able to tap into all that knowledge and the audience benefits from it, my friend. Appreciate you more than you know.
Well, Steve, you are welcome. I always enjoy chatting with you, and every time, as you know, when I hear your voice, the first thing I think of is Penn State football, and it's not far away.
Yep, 2 weeks from Saturday.
I know.
2 weeks from Saturday.
My daughter, who is graduated, is actually coming up for. She can't go to the West Virginia game, but she's coming up to the second game. Who's that against? Is that
Delaware?
Delaware. Yeah, she's coming up for that one.
Good. Tell her to stop by and please say hi to us before the game.
I will absolutely do that. She knows that all the time.
All right, Gerry. Thanks, my friend.
All right, Steve. Good chatting with you.
Gerry Dulac, Steelers Network and Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We'll talk with Matt about the concept of bubble wrap. Any of your guys play, ever? I mean...
Doesn't really look like it.
I mean, the bubble wrap thing didn't work for Judge.
Valid, yeah.
Stanton wants to be in bubble wrap every day.
True.
Oh, boy. You can't get better unless you play. You can't. I'm a firm believer in that. There's just things that happen in games that no matter how often you try to control it in practice or a scrimmage, stuff comes up and you sit there and go, oh, my goodness. And you think you've practiced everything. And in reality, every coach knows, all of them, that it's impossible to practice everything. Because crazy stuff comes up. Do you know how many coaches in college football practiced defending a field goal return after Davis took that one back for Auburn in the kick six game against Alabama? Every coach across the country went, okay. Haven't seen that one. Okay. Well, Alabama had a lot of big guys out there, couldn't chase them down because they were all there to protect for the field goal. You know how many coaches sat back and went, we need to practice that. Because stuff comes up you just don't know. That's what makes games beautiful, the unpredictability of it. Now, the Yankees are pretty predictable. I mean, most people didn't think they'd get more than 4 hits last night, and they got 4 hits.
Get the lingerie on the deck. Call the janitor.
What do you have, 5 hits now, 2 games?
Yeah, that's right.
I think Gerry had that in a game. All right, so your team's just not fun. They're just dull, boring.
Yes, they are. Very much.
I mean, even the Braves, like, as soon as they hit the 2-run homer, they all looked at each other last night and said, we got enough. So they just kind of mailed it in for the next 2 hours. All right, we'll come back with more in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. And a fabulous service department that backs it up every step of the way, all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Guess what we have 1 week from today? 1 week from today, we return to our high school football roundtable.
Very excited to get back to the season.
It's time to actually start playing games. In fact, the Penn State women's soccer team has North Carolina tonight at Jeffrey Field at 7. Number 2, North Carolina. Number 10, Penn State. That's tonight.
And Bucknell women's soccer, 2-time defending Patriot League champs, are back in action tonight as well.
Yeah, so there you go. We're finally getting to the fun stuff.
Bucknell's got St. Joe's tonight.
Yep.
In Lewisburg.
And that's terrific. Here you have 2 of the top 10 teams in the country. Number 2, North Carolina. Number 10, Penn State tonight. So, 7 o'clock, Jeffrey Field. People will ask, are you going? I'm like, I'm in Hershey tonight with Mike Rhodes and Char Moret. So, duty calls. Hassan Reddick. Evidently, the Eagles ran short on bubble wrap. Will have surgery on his injured thumb. They think he'll still be ready for the opener against the Patriots. Second in the league in sacks with 16, 3.5 more during the playoffs last year. He was terrific. Nolan Smith will probably get the start against Cleveland. And, of course, Reddick's now complaining about his contract. Hassan, a year ago, you signed it, okay? 3 years, $45 million. His average salary is 19th among edge rushers. Y'all see it. Y'all know what's going on. When asked about being underpaid, you signed it. Hello? You were happy when you signed it. That always cracks me up. Oh, disgusted by my contract. You signed it. Okay? I know you think he's underpaid.
I thought he had a good contract to start with, but
yeah, so do I. I mean, he's played 1 year of it. He was terrific. He was terrific. No getting around it. Reddick was terrific. But that's a year. Okay? Do that back-to-back, and now, okay, maybe hey, guys, can we talk about an extension here, a little more money, something like that? Hey, fine. But not after 1 year. Oh, well. I'm underpaid. You signed it. All right? You didn't sit there and go, I don't know, I don't think so. You could have held out for more money. Could have got more money from somebody else. You signed it. That's what I always love about this stuff. Oh, they're being so unfair to him. What were they unfair about? Now, if he has another really good year, he is absolutely right to go in and say, hey, look, I need, I need an extension. I need more something. That's fine. He and his agent are perfectly entitled to do that. But after 1 year of it, I'm undervalued. Well, I don't know. You still got 2 years to go on the contract, and I notice on this one right now, you're not participating. You're having surgery, and still getting checks. All right, but do you guys run out of bubble wrap, or?
Good question.
You got hurt in the scrimmage with Cleveland.
Yeah, on Monday.
Again, the scrimmages are really good. I think the coaches get a lot out of it, but they're controlled. They are controlled scrimmages. So you don't sit there and you put your team into situations. It's not played like a regular game. You avoid some of the craziness that happens in a game because it's controlled. And practice, I think practice is important, very important, because to me, it's not just the successes you have in practice. It's your ability to stop and say, hey, that needs to be a little different. Here's why. In a game, you can't do that. So you do have that ability in a practice and a controlled scrimmage to do that. But once you get to the game, it becomes a wide open, and you have to go out, not just with the you can't stop in the game and say, okay, guys, we have to get this has to be right. Hey. And that's the big difference. That's the big difference. Game, you can't do that. Can we stop here right now? I need to correct something. No, they've got the ball. And you have to get used to that. No, I'm not advocating that Jalen Hurts should go out and play 3/4 of the next two preseason games. No. But there is something to said to just not have the opening game against the Patriots be the first one you go out, and all of a sudden you've got people actually not only trying to go after you, but trying to tackle you for the first time since the Super Bowl. I've always been a firm believer you cannot get better unless you're playing. You can't get better unless you're practicing. You can't get better unless you're playing. It's hard to do. So what are your expectations for the big Cleveland preseason game that has America captivated?
Well, for me, actually, it's Tanner McKee. Can he build on what he did? Because he's going to have – I think he's going to play – he's probably going to start tonight, and I think he's probably going to play the first half.
He's the third-string quarterback.
I know, but it's just with the – I just didn't expect him to play that well. That now I'm curious to see what he can do to win the third quarterback spot, which I don't think he really has to do that much because that's how bad Ian Book has been. But still, It's just nice to know that you got some depth in case something happens to Jalen Hurts, and then in case something happens to Marcus Mariota. So
Yeah,
I'm just curious now.
Something happens to Marcus Mariota, you know what they're going to do?
Probably sign somebody else, but...
Yeah, exactly. And you're all sitting there going, oh, God, this guy's got me captivated. I'm captivated.
Well, yeah, I just didn't expect that from him, so now I'm just curious to see what he can do, with more playing time and having a game under his belt. But other than that, it's seeing the linebackers and the safeties again to see what happens there with those guys competing at those two spots, like we talked about with Ross Tucker.
They're actually a little thin right now at linebacker with the Reddick injury. Nolan Smith's going to start, so they're a little thin there right now.
Yeah, I'd like to see more from Nolan Smith tonight. He had a good game against
the game's tonight?
Baltimore. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'll listen to it on the way back for a while.
Yeah, he had a good game against Baltimore. He didn't make any splash plays like Jalen Carter did, but I thought he almost had a strip sack. Actually, was milliseconds away from a strip sack. So, yeah, I want to see all the Georgia guys again and see what they can do.
Do you want to know how many times I've been at practices where they were this close to a strip sack?
Yes, I know.
Yeah, happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just a snippet of some things I'll be looking at tonight. But I also honestly don't know how much the Georgia, at least Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, those guys are going to play. I have a feeling the Eagles might limit them a little too, considering, again, the joint practices this week. Wouldn't be my choice, but I'm just saying that's what I think is going to happen. This is a big night for all the bubble guys and guys that are not going to make the roster that are going to try to get on somebody else's roster or somebody else's practice squad.
All right. We'll take a break. Burke Magnus was able to talk with Richard Deitsch of The Athletic about ESPN moving forward, including the moves they made in the booth with Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. We'll talk about that in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Okay, so Richard Deitsch from The Athletic, who always does a lot of great work, sat down with Burke Magnus, who is the president of ESPN. Matt's name comes up in here several times, mostly under lawsuits, but that's okay. That's another story.
No, senor! No, senor! No, senor!
How would you characterize the NBA Finals for ESPN as part of a new deal? Quote, must have. That's all he said, must have. Right? What have we told you the entire time? Okay, it's not like love to have, it's must have. How aggressive will ESPN be in the NCAA women's basketball tournament when it goes up for bid? I think it will be very aggressive, he said. You know how much pride we've taken in that sport and the tournament for many years. Last year was a confluence of a dream matchup and a transcendent players, and it paid off at 9.9 million viewers, which is a number you just don't see in our business very often in any sport. At the same time, I did start referring to it as a 25-year overnight success. We take great pride in it. We call it our tournament. We don't have the men's tournament. We've had that in any way, shape, or form for many years. We love it. We're thrilled that it's succeeding. We know it'll be competitive, but we hope very much to keep it. I'll be honest with you. I think they're going to be the ones bidding for it. There may be other people that put in bids for it, but I'm sorry. It's the whole thing is going to be, can I have the Final Four? It's not going to be, can I get the other rounds? And you've got a lot of people committing a lot of money in a lot of other places right now. College football playoff rights. This is another one we really love to be a part of and intend to pursue aggressively. College football is something that's foundational to do what we do here, not just from a live event perspective, but from coverage in general. We believe the college football playoff and the commissioners did a really thoughtful job on the expansion plan, which we think will put that sport in an even stronger position in the future with a bracketed playoff. So we love it. We'd love to keep it, and I think we're going to behave accordingly. Is it a realistic possibility for one media company to keep it? He says yes, because you're actually going from 7 games up to 11 games. And the reason he says that is because he's including the New Year's Six right now. But you can't really include the New Year's Six. All right? The reason you can't really include it is that the way everything is spaced out. He says, I think this is going to drive maximum value. And the more you divide it up, the more that potentially depresses price and value. But it certainly could be too. Wrong about that. Okay? Don't play the game. Okay? It's not a question of, okay? You divide it up, the more that potentially depresses price and value. Wrong. You get more price by dividing it up. I mean, was Burke Magnus telling the National Football League they're stupid to be on every network? What? You paid $2.7 billion, Burke. I mean, come on. Okay. Sorry. It actually increases the price and increases the value by having multiple networks. That was a little too inside baseball on his part. $30 million a year deal, Pac-12. Pac-12 came back with a higher counter number. ESPN decided not to. Is that report accurate? Directionally, yeah, that's fair to say. I think the order was reversed. Our final offer, which was rejected, was never countered back. So in other words, they made their $30 million offer. They were said, hey, what about this? We want 50. ESPN came back with no other offer. We went in another direction, has been documented. Regardless, we thought we made a fair, disciplined, market-informed offer, and we couldn't get there with them at that time. I think that's a fair answer. That's a very fair answer. Okay? USC, UCLA. He said there's this regional appeal to college sports which has blossomed into a national interest, which he's right about. He was asked, and Stuart Mandel asked Richard Dice to ask this question. Mandel wanted to ask you, from your vantage point, how much do these historic Pac-12 schools going to the Big Ten, which means you don't own their rights in ESPN? He says, it's a great question. I mean, you have to be somewhat dispassionate in the rights business because things come and go. My son went to USC. I'm a big USC fan. I went to a small school. They're sort of my team in the Power Five. We'd love for those schools and the traditional Big Ten schools to have a presence on ESPN and ABC. That was a hard decision. Emotionally, very difficult. If you told me 10 years ago we'd be out of the Big Ten, I would have said there's no possible way that's going to happen. But fortunately for us, it was an easy business decision. I don't know that it hurts per se, but we've always sort of positioned ourselves as a national footprint in college football. We made a calculated decision to go all in with the SEC, which I believe is the best college football conference by far, at a time when premium rates have escalated to the point where you can't possibly own everything. We're all in on the SEC from a regular season perspective, and we feel really good about it. Guess who he didn't mention in that answer? In that answer, he never said the ACC and he never said the Big 12. Think about it. By the way, just to answer a question that some people might have, we're not a Big Ten rights holder. This will not affect College game day decisions in any way. We're going to continue to operate the show like we always have in the past. We've done plenty of CBS and Fox games over the years, which is true. They have. It'll be interesting to see how much they look at that. Says, what properties do you think we should look at in a 3 to 5 year window that have growth potential? He said, quote, I'm going to focus heavily on women's college sports. Despite the unbelievable year that women's basketball had, I think they're in for another one with competitiveness. UConn getting healthy, Paige Beckers. What LSU did, South Carolina is going nowhere. Caitlin Clark's back at Iowa. It's going to be another leap forward for women's basketball deeper into the regular season. Softball and volleyball in particular have just started to scratch the surface. Let me add gymnastics. One of the great head scratchers always for me has been some of the key sports in the Olympics, which are primetime staples, swimming and diving. Gymnastics had virtually no attention between the Olympics. So I think the LPGA could be a sleeping giant. Do you anticipate any more layoffs? No. It was an interesting interview. Very interesting. Now, let's get to the part where he talks about the suit. This is really interesting. Oh, we're out of time? I'm sorry, we're out of time?
That music does mean one thing.
Oh, no. It was so, I mean, I guess you're going to have to go to The Athletic and read it. Because he started talking about Friday night Shikellamy broadcasts. And, well, we're brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
Your home for news, AccuWeather, and sports.